Rounds of winter storms likely across much of the country through the month of February. The question is for exactly who and how much, and that's what we'll try to answer in today's video. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. It's a great way to stay up to date as we continue what has been a crazy start to 2025 in the weather department. And I think that might be a precursor for what's to come the rest of this year, so you'll definitely want to stay up to date. Also comment, let me know where you're watching from. Had a ton of comments on yesterday's video, so I appreciate everyone. Let me know where you're watching from. Always helps me kind of gauge where to talk about during these videos, so I appreciate that. Alrighty folks, with that said, let's dive right on into it, because a lot to talk about today, and a pattern that I would say is very interesting for many folks here, as we're going to kind of see a clash of seasons over much of the lower 48, that winter weather to the north, and then spring fever to the south. And I'll tell you who exactly is going to see what. Now, what you've seen kind of looping next to me here during the start of this video, this is the latest run of our European model, and I think it shows that potential very well for winter weather in multiple waves. And another key component of this is kind of the direction that the storms are moving. So obviously they're moving east to west, but the first storm quite far north, the second storm a little bit further south, and the third storm quite a bit further south. And I think that'll be an important theme to discuss in today's video, is kind of this transitional zone on who could start one storm as rain and then have ice the next storm and then maybe snow the final storm, is going to be, again, a key component in today's video. Now, before we get to all the super exciting stuff, let's talk a little bit about what's happening out there right now. And you can see our upper level water vapor loop here on satellite. Right now, things are relatively quiet, so go ahead, enjoy it, get out there, enjoy some of the spring fever if you're in the south, if you're in the northeast, or just really much of the northern tier of the country. Still quite cold. Same story for the west coast, but if you've got a nicer day, try to enjoy it, because you see this big mess of kind of higher end water vapor values back out west. Yeah, that's coming east, and that'll be the start of our next storm as we get into really tomorrow and then into the Thursday time frame. And that's really going to be the theme through the next little bit, is just this Pacific train of energy breaking off little pieces that move to the east and eventually become these East Coast winter storms throughout the first half of the month of February. And kind of looking at our radar, this lines up pretty well. You can see pretty quiet across the east right now, but back out west where we have all that energy and all that water vapor kind of overlapping each other, that's where we've got some active weather. Heavy rain through portions of California, heavy snow into the northern Rockies. That's been a big theme over the past couple of days and will continue likely through this week as we kind of continue this more La Nina-like pattern. If you're watching from the west, it's very often you probably hear when you're getting your forecast, at least a seasonal forecast, you hear La Nina or the PNA. Well, both of those are in a favorable orientation right now for West Coast cold air and snow and rain. And that's absolutely good news, because that's going to help with that snowpack that we really need to build up here before we get into our dry season towards the spring and the summer. Now, current alerts out there, yeah, it's pretty quiet, like I said, in the east. Now, you look out back towards the west, again, we've got winter storm warnings for much of Montana, Idaho, through Washington, Oregon, and down into the Sierra Nevadas of California. You see all those gray boxes in the southeast? Yeah, that's dense fog. In fact, we had it yesterday. We have it again today. That's that mix of that very warm, humid Gulf air surging northward, interacting with the fact that, yeah, it's still February, so it's generally cold for most of us. And that kind of humid air fighting back that cold, that's leading to some morning fog here through much of the south, and will likely again be a theme through the next little bit. This is a classic setup for pretty widespread fog here in the southern tier of the country. In fact, just about the entire state of Florida kind of burning off some of that fog this morning. So if you see some of it, let me know what your visibility is like out there wherever you are watching from. Now, let's go ahead and start with the west. We're going to kind of breeze through this because it's really more of the same, to be honest with you, and then we'll start diving in on those East Coast winter storms here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and move it ahead here. This is out west starting this afternoon. Folks, more of the same. Snow, where we have those winter storm warnings, plenty of rain into the coast of California. The Sierra Nevadas getting absolutely clobbered by heavy snow. And look at this snow up into Oregon, kind of the backside of the storm system. Not even necessarily so much elevation driven out of this one, just a good old-fashioned thumping of snow where we've got some of that cold air kind of oozing southward out of Canada, overlapping with this pretty strong low pressure system this afternoon and evening. through much of the west. And we get into overnight tonight, folks, more of the same, getting into tomorrow morning on Wednesday, just round after round after round of snow. I think by Wednesday afternoon and evening, becoming a little less widespread, especially down through California, some of that kind of storminess shifting northward back towards the state of Washington, Oregon, NoCal, and then into the northern Rockies here by Wednesday afternoon and evening. And then kind of, again, more of the same by Thursday, just less widespread than what we're going to see maybe today and tomorrow. But then we get to overnight Thursday and into Friday, and you see this area of low pressure with enhanced snowfall over the northern Rockies. This is Friday afternoon. This is our next storm system for the east that will impact this weekend after the storm that we're about to see work in, really again tomorrow and into Thursday. Now, before all is said and done, how much snow can we expect out here? Well, I think some pretty good totals into California. Again, the northern Rockies here through Idaho, Montana, and then the mountains here of Oregon. Let's start down here in California. We're talking, we're going to count the totals in feet here. 70 inches of snow. This just over the next 3 days, folks. Obviously that's a lot of snow. It's going to pile up pretty quickly here into the mountains there. And then pretty good totals up through Oregon, into the northern Rockies. I keep saying it every video, but if you have a ski trip planned out here, you absolutely lucked out with this pattern. La Nina finally showing its face again. And that's going to really help to bump up these snowfall totals. And again, good news for that snowpack. The more snow we get now, the higher the water supply will be out here come summertime. So always rooting for you folks out west to kind of rack up on as much snow during the winter months as you can. And it looks like we're doing a pretty good job of that so far this February. Now, with that said, let's start talking about East Coast weather. Many of my viewers from the East, myself included here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this is a pattern that, again, is going to be very favorable for not one, not two, maybe not even three, but 3+ potentially winter storms over just the first half of February. Again, that's just now through about the 15th or 16th, 17th time frame. Today's the 4th. So about over the next 10 to 15 days, we're going to see round after round after round after round of winter storms. And I'll tell you, I think some folks are going to be counting the snowfall totals in double digits by the time the month of February is over. And it's great to hear because we haven't had a very good February in the winter weather department in quite some time. This year looks different. That's what we like to see for our snow lovers. Okay, so here's the setup. This is tomorrow morning on our upper level energy map. This is 500 millibar height relative vorticity. And you're probably thinking, well, Jared, I don't really see a whole lot going on in the east. And you would be correct. However, we've got this big trough dipping out west. And what this is creating is a very favorable zone here of divergence. And that area of divergence is going to move off to the east and likely even get a surface low pressure to form. We talk about this all the time on the channel. We talk about divergence, convergence in the upper levels. Divergence in this case means rising air. That means storm systems are likely to form, or at least some sort of precipitation. And with such a big area of rising air here, that could absolutely happen. In fact, it's going to happen by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon. And eventually all of that area kind of pushes eastbound. And you can kind of see this area of increased divergence and vorticity and storm energy pushing east by Thursday, and eventually by Thursday evening and overnight into the Friday timeframe. This kind of gets on out of here. But then you see a more impressive piece of energy, and that's going to be a reinforcing shot of cold air by Friday. And that's going to make the next storm track bring winter weather even further south than the first one. And if you think that's a big jog south, wait till you see the potential jog south on the track from storm number 2 and storm number 3. That's the one that I think more people could get in play on, and we'll talk about that in today's video. Now, let's go and time out storm number 1. Yesterday, I showed you multiple models. Today, I'm just going to show you the GFS because honestly, the models have come together pretty good. So we can spend a little more time talking about totals and a little less time just kind of, going over a ton of models that are going to show you the same thing. So let's start this out. This is Wednesday afternoon. I know it's small print, but above my head is the time. It says 1 p.m. February 05. That's, 1 o'clock February 5th is what the model is projecting radar to look like. Now, we're going to have some showers tomorrow, and I will mention, I didn't pull up a map, but we have a marginal risk down here into portions of Tennessee, Kentucky, and kind of surrounding areas for severe weather potential tomorrow. We've got that increase in moisture and humid Gulf-like, spring-like air. That combined with just enough wind shear from this storm system forming could produce a couple strong storms, including an isolated tornado or two. So be aware of that tomorrow afternoon down there into Kentucky and Tennessee if you're watching from those areas. Now, here comes the bulk of the storm, though. This is the evening of Wednesday and overnight. That very humid air kind of in conjunction with this surface low pressure back towards Oklahoma And Kansas, here's the warm front associated with it, and all of that lift along the warm front running into that very cool, dense air at the surface. And that's why we're going to run an ice risk right here into the northern Ohio Valley, back down into the DMV area. And you notice, see this kind of little caveat down? It's not just a straight kind of cylinder across the Ohio Valley. This is classic cold air damming that's setting up. So basically, if you're unfamiliar with what that is, let me go ahead and teach you, because it's going to be very important for this pattern, especially as we get to storm number 2 and 3. It's already a little evident here with storm number 1, but basically high pressure right here parked over the northeast. Flow around high pressure in the northern hemisphere is counterclockwise, and what that's doing is bringing this cold air up from Canada kind of around our high pressure. And what's happening is it's hitting the Appalachia chain here. Remember, these mountains here are not massive, but they're tall enough that that cold air that's very dense and shallow doesn't really want to go up and over it. So it hits the mountains, and instead of going up and over it, it just keeps pushing south and south and south and south. And next thing you know, we've got this wedge, as we call it, of cold air through much of the mid-Atlantic. It happens every year, and especially during the wintertime when we get these high pressures, and it's going to be crucial to forecasting winter weather over this pattern. You can already see, though, some of that cold air causing trouble further south here, east of the Alps and west of the Alps due to that, here into the D.C. area, Baltimore, back down towards the mountains of northern Virginia. Again, this is overnight Wednesday to the north, though, through Michigan, Wisconsin, and the state of Minnesota there. Really all snow out of this event. We keep on going. This is Thursday morning, an icy, just snowy, wintry mix mess through Philadelphia, much of northern New Jersey, Long Island. So that morning commute, you're going to have all sorts of troubles up through Scranton, the Finger Lakes, eventually into Utica, Binghamton. Then we get into Thursday afternoon here. And the good news for our friends up in Boston, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, off of the shoreline here, a little bit further north, we'll say, especially up into Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York. Yeah, this looks like an all-snow event, a lot less of an icing concern here. Now, it's a pretty quick-hitting storm. It's potent, but quick-hitting. So you see, this is Thursday morning, this is Thursday afternoon, this is Thursday evening, this is overnight around the midnight time frame. The storm's basically gone. So not one of these long-lasting nor'easters that's going to be 4 or 5 days, but definitely a worthy appetizer here for what's to come in the pattern. Then a little lake effect on the backside of the storm here into Friday afternoon as that reinforcing shot of cold air works on through that we talked about. And that's the first storm. Now, let's talk about totals here, because obviously, you came here to hear more than just what's going to fall from the sky. You want to know how much of it's going to fall. Well, this is the European forecast. I think overall doing a pretty good job. We'll start up north. Really, the big state winner up here is going to be Minnesota, especially up towards Eli, areas of kind of the beak here, or whatever you guys call this. I'm going to call it the beak of Minnesota. Tell me if I just offended a bunch of people. Might have. Won't be the first time. But up in there, about half a foot of snow looks like an all right bet. You get further south towards the Twin Cities, per usual, unfortunately, it's going to be a very sharp gradient down here. So the northern side of the city could get 3, 4, 5 inches of snow. The southern side of the city could be a little less, but I'll mention this is still a couple days away, so this could trend a little bit further south if that's something the atmosphere feels like it wants to do. So we'll definitely watch that, and then some snow over the Dakotas as well. And obviously, you can pause the video at any point to find your county or community here and get a better idea of how much is going to fall from the sky. Also, I just realized the map was not fully over, so now you can definitely pause it here and take a look there at that. All right, so that's this section. Let's go ahead and take a look now at ice. Not really much of an ice concern into the northern tier. You get over here, though, towards Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and even into the Chicago area. Much higher ice concern out this way into southern Michigan, through the Detroit area, maybe 1/10 of an inch, upwards of 1/4 of an inch of ice, down towards Indianapolis, over towards much of Ohio. Going to be an icy mess here for the overnight of Wednesday into early Thursday morning, and even the Chicago area. So we could see some disruptions here in travel, really through much of this region. The bullseye here, though, like I said, over much of kind of the western half of Ohio, specifically the northwestern half of Ohio and the northeastern section there of Indiana. That's where we could see 1/4 of an inch or so of ice, and that would cause bigger travel concerns in that region. So definitely a nice concern here. You look at snowfall in this region, and not a lot of it until you get up north towards Minnesota, like we talked about, into Wisconsin, Michigan, and specifically the Upper Peninsula there, and then into the northern half of the lower section there of Michigan, or the thumb, I know a lot of people call it, into that region. So, not a lot of snow, but noteworthy, definitely for sure. Areas like Detroit, Milwaukee, Green Bay, lesser snow totals, probably a little bit more ice. You're going to be in that battleground zone, so it might be a bit of a wintry mix. But that's kind of the snowfall forecast at this area. Now, let's bring it to the Northeast. This is where ice will be a big concern from Philadelphia through Harrisburg State College, Scranton, even back into the Pittsburgh area, and then down into Maryland, D.C., and then the mountains of Northern Virginia, watching for ice concerns as that cold air damming, again, leads to that very shallow, dense cold air with that warm air on top of it. That's going to lead to ice over snow. You get further north, though, up towards kind of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, down into Massachusetts, and even the kind of inland sections of Connecticut and Rhode Island. Less of an ice or rain concern. I think it'll be more of an all snow event into that region. You can see that here on the snowfall forecast from our European model. Yeah, there it is. We're talking pretty good totals here of maybe about 2 to 4 inches in Boston. I think half a foot's going to be pretty easy to come by in the mountains of New Hampshire, Vermont, upstate New York, and then into the down east areas of Maine. Question marks down here towards New York, Philadelphia, northern New Jersey. This is going to be that battleground zone where it may start as snow and then go to ice and then to rain, kind of one of those transitions. But you get further north in there, I think it's going to be more of an all snow event, as you can see here on the European model. I'll even show you a couple more models. Here's the GFS. Again, the GFS brings that snow a little bit further south. We'll see. We'll kind of keep monitoring it. We'll show you the UK Met here. We've got the Icon model, which is closer to the European, and then the Canadian model, which is also closer to the European. So you get the idea. The interior Northeast is going to be the big winner here, but snow chances, at least down into New York City, Philadelphia, especially up through northern New Jersey and some of those higher terrains and into the Scranton area. All right, that's storm number 1. Storm number 2 on the way not long after it. Here's Saturday morning. And you're probably thinking, well, Gerald, this looks like the exact same map. Well, it kind of is. The same idea. Another storm system coming from the west coast, crossing through the Rockies into the east coast once more, bringing plenty of lift and really tracking through the exact same regions here on the map. And then once again, bringing another reinforcing shot of cold air. So did somebody say deja vu? Yeah, that's kind of what it's going to look like here. Or kind of like the movie Groundhog Day. Well, it's Groundhog Day again. That's what it's going to feel like probably with this storm system. And here we go once more, starting on Saturday morning instead of Wednesday morning this time. Check it out. Same thing, another day. A storm system crossing through the exact same region, same places, getting the same thing. We got ice in the northern mid-Atlantic up through portions of the Northeast. We've got snow into sections of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. Keep on going ahead in time. The interior Northeast, again, lucking out on the snow here. And then you get further south, it's an icy mess into southern New York State, into Pennsylvania. And I will mention this storm a little more potent. So we're going to see stronger winds with this one. It's a more well-defined mid-latitude cyclone. So we'll also run maybe a bit of a severe weather potential. You see kind of what's a little bit of a squall line pushing through the southeast here. This will be Saturday and Sunday. Watch that obviously as well for some severe weather, but the snow and ice being confined up to the northeast into portions of Canada, Ontario, Quebec. Going to get some good snow out of this one, I think, as we go through our Saturday night and then through Sunday morning. Now this one, at least on the European model here, gets that rain snow line a little bit further north towards the end of the storm. Again, a stronger storm system is going to have a stronger warm air advection here on the warm front. So that means higher totals for those of you that see snow. You're going to get more lift, but also that warm line or that warm nose is going to push further north. So some of you might really cut down on your totals. And that's kind of the tricky part of forecasting this one. And then this is out of here by Sunday evening, and you can see that maybe that severe weather threat Sunday afternoon down through the Carolinas. We'll need to watch that. Now that's the European. What about the GFS? Let me back it up for you so we can actually see the storm. Here it is. So kind of same idea, honestly, very similar to what I just showed you on the European. Kind of has the same rain snow line, same idea, and really just more of the same there. So we're not going to need to go through that and break it down piece by piece. But what does become interesting is after that storm. So let's look at the European model. Again, here's Sunday afternoon. We're kind of clearing out. But what's happening at this point is cold air is moving further south. Again, we got another reinforcing shot of cold air. And now at this point, our rain snow line, or this first blue line, you see this 540 line, all the way down to the North Carolina, Virginia line, down through portions of Tennessee into Kentucky. This is overnight, or this is Monday afternoon into Tuesday. And look what happens. Another storm building in now with that rain snow line further south. And because of it, we've got a winter storm by next week. This would be storm number 3, much further south, including areas like Missouri, Kentucky, Virginia, the entire state, not just an icy event in the north. This is mostly snow. We've got some snow in North Carolina, and then this all moves north and east. And this is a whopper of a storm, folks. And this is the big one to watch. Obviously, the first two are going to cause problems, but really for more areas that are kind of used to it, we get to next week, this is a much larger, more impactful storm for areas that maybe aren't quite as used to getting them through Virginia, the Delmarva, into the DMV, and then up potentially the I-95 corridor, and then even some snow back into the Ohio Valley. Yeah, this is a pretty big one. Moves up the coast, becomes quite the nor'easter on the European. Again, the timing here would be next Wednesday into Thursday, and moves up the coast through Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and then is out of here. And then guess what? Another storm right after that one. So the storm train not ending here. It's just one model, though. Let me show you the GFS for the same time frame. Let me back it up a little far ahead here. So here we go. This is next Sunday afternoon. Here's the storm number 2. Here's that cold front associated with it and that cold air moving southward. And then another wave of precipitation. Now a little different in the orientation here, but same idea. Another overrunning event. And notice here these isobars. See how they're kind of kinking down here into the Carolinas. This is that classic example of cold air damming. I kind of drew it a little bit badly here. I'll try to draw it again for you. Yeah, they kind of look like that. That's that injection of cold air that's messing with the pressure gradient a little bit. So that's something to watch. That's why we're getting snow and ice further south into Virginia, North Carolina, and then eventually just due to the cold air in general in place, this becomes a massive overrunning event for much of the East Coast. It's round after round of winter weather, and then another nice looking nor'easter there. And then later on, we get one a little more favorable for the Carolinas down here by next Thursday or so, at least on this model. So obviously, you're looking at that. And if you're watching in the Northeast, you're watching in the Ohio Valley, in the Northern Mid-Atlantic, you're thinking, all right, snowmageddon on the way. A little too soon for that, but the pattern is extremely favorable for winter weather and really a prolonged period of winter weather through that region, and potentially even my folks in the Carolinas. I know you didn't see a lot on that one. I'm going to throw you a bone here in a second and tell you why you're still in the mix as well for potential winter weather. All right, so these are the ensembles. This is the chance for some freezing rain for storm number 2. And folks, really the same areas as the first storm. You can see the highest potential there through Pennsylvania, into southern Michigan, northern Ohio, northern Indiana, really more of the same here, even back into the Chicago metro. That gets out of here, and then here comes storm number 3, and that freezing rain signal. You can see that classic cold air damming look here. We've got a pretty good chance of some freezing rain, even as far south as Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte. I know you didn't see much in the previous maps. The ensembles here, though, look pretty icy. Same story for Greensboro, potentially Raleigh, into the Danville area, and then that ice signal kind of dies off a little bit in the Northeast as you have more pronounced cold air, and it's a little less of an icy profile through the atmosphere. Now, what about snow? That's the big question. Well, here's storm number 2 snow chances. Obviously pretty good through the interior Northeast, Boston, northbound up through New Hampshire, Vermont, upstate New York, down east areas of Maine. Yeah, you could get a pretty good amount of snow with the weekend storm. And then storm number 3 next week. Watch this huge signal for snow develop from Kansas, Missouri, all the way over to Virginia. And look at the signal here through D.C., Baltimore, back down towards Blacksburg, Virginia, into Philadelphia, northern New Jersey, already running a 75% chance of about an inch of snow. For this to be, not quite 10 days away, but about 8, 9 or so days, that's a really good signal. That's something we don't see very often. And even that signal kind of poking its head back down into the Carolinas. Now, this would be a classic I-85 North type event. If we get snow down into South Carolina, North Carolina, it's a classic Huntersville, Mooresville, Travelers Rest, Walhalla, kind of up through the Greensboro area type of event, and then into the mountains. This probably would not do a lot for our folks in the Sandhills, the coastal plain, probably not even so much down into the Midlands, but to be fair, you just had a record winter storm. So, and kind of another thing, just to kind of go on a tangent here, there's kind of a hole here that we haven't seen a lot of snow this winter in the Carolinas, from Charlotte to Columbia, back to Greenville, Spartanburg, and that hole's got to get filled eventually, hopefully. Obviously, I want it to happen living in Charlotte. I'd love a snow day, but we'll see what the storm does. Obviously, not going to let what I want to get into the forecast, but you do see that cold air damming signal nonetheless. And to back that up, let's take a look at this. This is the European AI model. I'll tell you, folks, this model has done very well this winter in the long range, sniffing out these storms. And here is what it predicts for storm number 3. Now, obviously, you're looking at this and you're saying, Gerald, that's just rain. What are you talking about? Well, the model, since it's new on the kind of block here, it only shows precipitation. So not all of this is rain. It's just, this is precipitation in general. But you see this blue 540 line we talked about earlier, that rain snow line? Well, that's what this would be probably. Now, not all the time, but that at least shows that the cold air is further down. Another thing to note with this is look at the high pressure we talked about earlier. This is a perfect placement for cold air damming. And again, you can see that in the isobars here, that cold air getting funneled southward. And if we look at the temperatures at this time, let me go one more ahead. This would be Wednesday evening. You're seeing this, you're like, all right, Gerald, that looks like rain. Look at the ground temperatures at the same time. We've got sub-freezing temperatures in Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Pickens, towards Cherokee County, South Carolina there, up into the I-85 corridor, the foothills of North Carolina. This is a good signal. Back even towards Raleigh, Greensboro, Danville, and then obviously up into the Virginia area. And if I go back to the actual storm, watch it ride up the coast here, and not get quite as far into the northeast as some of the other models, but a lot better of a look down towards the Carolinas for snow. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? Not necessarily, but it does mean we've got somebody on our side, at least in the ensembles, in the ballpark as well. So I know I've got a lot of viewers in the Carolinas, so I know that's why I kind of went on a tangent there for you folks. But don't lose hope. Again, storm number 3 could do it for us, and then maybe a little piece of energy after that, like the GFS showed. Maybe that could happen. Still plenty of opportunities for snow before the winter is done for. Now, let's talk about the long range. That's kind of the next 3 storms, and then I'll let you go here. This video is already going a bit longer than I expected, but here's kind of the thought process. So this is during storm number 3 time frame. We've got this southeast ridge, and that's kind of, what's going to create this classic overrunning event into areas like this. Now, you're thinking in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, well, we're in the red. How are we going to get snow? Well, kind of a classic saying during the winter, or really any time of the year, is we don't live at 500 millibars. So basically, yeah, there might be a little bit of warm air above our heads, but it's not enough to prevent snow, and it's cold enough at the surface that this wouldn't be a big deal. If anything, what this helps to do at least is move the storm track kind of along the coast here, along these boundaries, and that's why the weekend storm looks the way it does on the models. And then you get further out in time, folks, the thought that maybe that southeast ridge builds back in, becomes a little bit stronger by the middle of the month, and then we get further out in time, and check this out, by the second half of the month, a more impressive trough of cold air. This once again could return winter weather chances to much of the eastern half of the country, and I think you can see that pretty well here on our temperature forecast here on the European ensemble. So this week, it's spring fever in the south and it's cold in the north. That's kind of the forecast. Here's Wednesday afternoon. You can see that warm air here in the southern tier. You can see that cold air damming and cold shot of air up into the northeast. We get to the weekend, going to be really more of the same here, warm in the south. In fact, a big warm up by Friday for just about everyone until that reinforcing shot of cold air once again works into the northeast by the weekend. And then that will lead to the weekend storm. Still spring fever in the south. We're talking highs in the 70s and even 80s in the deep south. Yeah, I mean, it's going to feel warm. We're talking April-like temperatures in February. And then comes the bigger shot of cold air by next week. And this is why we could get winter weather chances much further south. Check this out. Again, next week, this is a classic cold air damming signal on the European ensembles. So even if it's not snow, it'll be a very cold rain. And that's going to be something that either way is going to flip this spring-like pattern back to winter about a week or so from now. And then you get towards later in the month, folks, and that cold air, again, a little bit of a warm up right around the middle of the month. But after that, once again, trying to cool back down in the east. So that's what we're looking at. That's the forecast. Complicated one, but an exciting one for winter weather fans. And if you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Also, here at the end of the video, I did want to let you know I'll probably start doubling up on videos. Also have a preemptive live stream kind of planned tomorrow night. So we can talk about the first storm, the second storm, and the third storm a little more in depth. So swing by for that. I'll have hopefully a guest speaker on again like I have the past couple of times. And then also want to thank anyone from Mitch West Weather's channel that came by this morning to watch the video. I know he's sick, so obviously hoping he gets better and praying for him. Yeah, appreciate you joining me. All right, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, think snow, and I'll see you all next time.